everyone, welcome back to Wild and Free Art. Today I'm going to show you how to make handmade paper from your art scraps. This is a great way to use up all those trimmings and those teensy tiny bits that you can barely use for anything. I don't keep them all, but I do keep quite a few. I also use it for old text blocks that I've cut out of my old diaries and haven't used in a while. The first step is to tear everything into small pieces. The smaller you tear it, the easier it will be to then blend it. Here I'm ripping some of the softer papers by hand, but I also do have some bits of cardstock and I'm just using scissors to trim that. After you finish cutting and tearing all your paper, you should have a good amount of small pieces to play with. At this point, I add a bit of water, enough to cover the paper, and then I pop a lid on it and let it sit and soak overnight. The next day is fun time as your paper has soaked through the night and now it's time to make the pulp. Your softer paper should be quite translucent and rip easily by now. In order to make the pulp, you'll need a blender, a sieve, and a bowl, and a bunch of water and a container to put your made pulp in. I've used one with a lid because making the pulp is quite a long process and sometimes it will dry out. So you start with putting about 2 handfuls into your blender, which I recommend using only for crafty bits because paper bits might get stuck underneath the blades and you really don't want to be having that in a smoothie. So after I've put in about 2 handfuls of paper, I am going to add some water, enough to cover it and let it move in loosely. And then I'm going to cover it up, lock it into place, and put it on high power until I get a nice smooth pulp. This is more or less what your pulp should look like once you have finished blending it, just like a nice thick smoothie. The next step is to pour the pulp through your strainer and twist it around and stir it around to get rid of the excess water and have a drier pulp. This is also a good time to stick your hands in and find any chunks that did not get blended up properly. I also found myself with a bit of surprise that you will see later. Once you've strained your pulp, you can go ahead and pop it into your Tupperware container, and then you just repeat the process, except this time instead of adding fresh water to my blender, I am reusing a part of the drained water that I had from straining the pulp, just to save on water. Some people always add fresh water to it. That is, of course, your choice, but as always, paper making takes a lot of water, and I try and reduce as much waste as possible when I'm making my art. So while sifting through my second batch of pulp, that's when I found my little surprise that I wasn't expecting. As part of my recycling of pages, I sometimes use washi tape. And I have discovered that not all washi tape is made equal, and that some washi tape has plastic in it. So obviously the plastic separates from the paper bits and it would get into your paper. And also some of the washi tape itself, because it's plastic, does not actually break down. So I had to manually remove a lot of plastic. So if you are using washi tape, I would recommend double checking to see if it's got a plastic coating on it before throwing it into your recycled paper to use in paper making. Your next step is to fill a large container with fresh water. You're going to want to be able to make sure that your mold and deckle will comfortably fit into the water and give you space to dip them in at an angle and shake out the excess water. Another thing that you'll need is a towel, an old towel, a sponge, and some couching sheets, which I used as an old bed sheets. I cut them up and I use them. And then also, if you want, you can always add any embellishments that you would like to add to your paper. I have some confetti and some flower petals and leaves. I decided here to use 3 different size decals, my A4, A5, and my little business card tag size deckle. When using your mold and deckle, always make sure that you are using it the right way around. You'll see that the netting is attached to one side of the mold, and you're going to want to make sure that the part with the shallower end is up, and then that you put the deckle on top of that so that it's easier for you to remove the paper when you're couching. So to make the paper, you're going to want to add a couple handfuls of pulp, and you're going to really want to spread it around in the water. It might take a few tries to get the right thickness of the paper. But the good thing is that if it doesn't work out, you can just pop it right back into the water and add a bit more pulp or try again until you get the right thickness. Once you've put your pulp in, all you need to do is angle your deckle and mold into the water at a 45-degree angle, submerging it completely and then pulling up flat and slow. You can give it a little bit of a shake as you pull it up to help make sure that the paper pulp lays flat on top of your mold. Allow the water to dry completely. You can set it on the edge of your tray for a minute or two if you want before proceeding to the next step. The next step is called couching, and this is what all those sheet scraps were for. You can put more than one piece of paper on each of your sheets. It just depends on the size that you've cut them and the space that you have. So once you've managed to pull up your sheet of paper and you have let most of the water drain out, you're going to remove the deckle and then you're going to very carefully flip the paper out onto your sheet. Pressing the edges is always, it's a good way to help adhere it to the sheet, but the next step is super important. You need to use your sponge and press out all the excess water, making sure to get into the angles. Sometimes I also add another drying process of a towel after I've gone with a sponge, especially as it gets more wet and it gets a bit harder to remove. Then you're going to very, very slowly pull up your mold. You might need to tug on your cooking sheet a few times, but you'll see that your paper will slowly come off of the mold and attach itself to the sheet. I always take my time to do this because your wet paper will tear very easily, as you can see here. But I kept this in the video to show you. The reason this one tore, as you can see, is because it is extremely thin. So I knew at this point that I needed to add more pulp to the water to make my sheet thicker. Here I'm making another sheet of paper using my confetti, and I have now gotten into the flow of making the paper and have managed to nail the right thickness. So here you can see I'm once again squeezing out as much of the water as I can. And then I'm doing the second layer of drying by using an old towel and just pressing out any excess water. The towel underneath was quite wet by this point, so this step was pretty important as the cooking sheet got wet pretty much as soon as it got put down. And then I slowly begin lifting up my mold, slightly tugging on the cooking sheet to help it come off, and slowly lifting it, and eventually you'll see a piece of paper is ready to come. On this sheet I decided to use to make two pieces of paper. So here I am adding on the second piece of paper onto the sheet, and after this I am going to take it and carefully hang it up on my drying rack. I just use a clothes dryer, and I carefully fold the sheet over the little wire on it, leaving enough space, and then I leave it in near a radiator if it's wintertime, or anyway in a place that is not breezy, to dry overnight. The next day, it's time to remove the paper from the cooking sheets. When it dries, you'll see it curls up on the edges, and it's super easy to take off the sheets. If it sticks, it's probably still not dry enough, but usually by the next day, it's completely dry, and you can remove it from the cooking sheets easily. After detaching all the paper from the sheets, I take it to my iron, and I put a piece between two pieces of greaseproof oven paper, or you can use other pieces of fabric. I put the iron on high heat with no steam, and I iron all my pieces of paper to make sure that they lay flat. If you have a book press, you could very easily use a book press in order to do this. And here are all my papers that I made with a day of work. Now comes time to test them.
The results are also done.
Thank you.
What? What?
I said thank you. Now we do the test.
Dun 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 dun
Dun
dun
dun
dun.
dun. First, we do the folding test. It folds without cracking. Beautiful. Look at that. Now
She
we
chose this
do.
paper because it was really vivid and partially weird. Let's verify this in the house paper and we will see if it works better on pencil or paper or pen. Hello.
That works nice. That works
So
nice.
ew. But what about for shading? Could I do the shading test?
Hold on. Only a little bit with a felt pen, huh?
Can I do the shading test?
Hang on. Well, let's do it with a black one. This one not so good with the pen. So that one doesn't work very well. This is the same as that, isn't it? All right, you can do a shading test here.
With the pencil. Okay. We're going to start from dark. Hey. Works great. No test.
There you go.
Perfect for shading.
Thumbs up.
But now you